Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, Executive Editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a new series which I call Rarities, unusual recordings by major artists who do things that you would not necessarily expect them to do, and do them very well, of course, because there's no point in talking about it if what they do sucks. So the first example of my collection of rarities, of which I have quite a few, as you can well imagine here in the overflow room and elsewhere, is this. Seiji Ozawa's recording of Honegger's Joan of Arc at the Stake. Now, if this isn't a rarity, what is? And it's on Deutsche Grammophon. It's a major label. Some of this stuff, it comes out and then it just disappears. Poof! As if it had never existed. But this is a splendid performance of a very rare work. It used to be rather more popular than it is now. And you can still get it, I think, on Supraphon. There was a Honegger series on Supraphon. And, of course, there was Maurice Abravanel did a bunch of Honegger as well for Vanguard and Turnabout and Vox and whatnot. But, of course, where is it? Who knows? This was remarkable when it was first issued. What's the date? It was a Radio France live recording at the Festival de Saint-Denis in 1989. And Joan of Arc at the Stake is a very unusual piece. Honegger did a series of oratorios, some of them based on text by Paul Claudel. After this one came La Danse des Morts, which is also a wonderful work, The Dance of the Dead. It's fabulous. And of course, there was what's the other one? The King David. Thank you. There's just a bunch of these suckers, and they were so popular at one point. They really were. They were almost like standard repertoire pieces, but they have since disappeared, and it's a terrible shame. Now, as some of you may know, I detest speaking with music, and this has two major speaking parts, Joan and Friar Dominic, or whatever his name is. Yeah, Frere Dominique. And they're both wonderfully done here by Marta Keller and George Wilson. They really are beautifully, beautifully done. It works. It works because the text is wonderful poetry by itself, and because the music is so fascinatingly quirky. For example, it has 3 saxophones instead of French horns. It has an Old Martineau, believe it or not, a la Messiaen. It goes, wow, like that, Really, really interesting stuff. The textures are interesting. The music is gripping, absolutely visceral and gripping. And of course, in this case, I say of course, it's not obvious, but in this particular example, the circumstances of the setting around 1940, during the war, France had been divided into Vichy and French France, and so Claudel wrote a text which basically symbolized the divided France and the possibility of France being reunited through, of course, the grace of God. Claudel was a religious guy, and Joan, who symbolizes the united France and the suffering of France, which will be redeemed, a la, it's a very Christian story. You get that, you have like suffering and misery and death, and somehow that makes things better. That's the basic sort of story there. But it's a great work. It's an absolutely fascinating work. And Seiji Ozawa, who was not known as a Honegger guy, but who was a very, very fine French music person, recorded this very, very effectively. And I just wish it were still available, because it deserves to be heard. It really, really does. But if you can find it, I do urge you to give it a listen. And in general, to give Honegger's sort of stage, theatrical, concert, choral works a listen, because they're extraordinary. They're like no other composer's work. There's nothing like them. There's nothing like them in the entire repertoire. They are absolutely unique in what they do and how they do it. Because Honegger's own oral imagination, his feeling for music was so exceptional. He had a sense of sound that was like nobody else's. And so when he did these big pieces, he worked with interesting orchestral forces, and he used them in quite different and original ways. And again, he found very, very good texts, very good partners who wrote words that were worth setting to music. And he had the ability, as in his film music, by the way, which is very similar, to take a scene or a setting and immediately establish the correct atmosphere. The best way to get at the essence of it in the shortest and smallest number of notes possible, so that what you get is a succession of short scenes that are just immensely gripping. And actually, the speaker who this was written for was none other than Ida Rubinstein. Now, Ida Rubinstein, in case you don't know who she was, commissioned Stravinsky's Persephone. She was an actress and a dancer and who knows what else she was. She was the person who commissioned Ravel's Bolero. Because she wasn't really a ballet dancer in the traditional sense. She was more of a modern dance person, or maybe a performance artist, we would call her in these days. And all kinds of people wrote stuff for her. She had money to commission works or money at her disposal. And so there was a lot that was written for her to do. And this is another Ida Rubinstein special. Really, I just have to digress for a minute. It's really fascinating. If we were to take sort of a list of the most important artists of the 20th century, the ones who commissioned the most and who had the most stuff written for them. I mean, you have Paul Zacher, you have Koussevitzky, you have Elizabeth Sprague Coolidge, you have the Princess de Polignac, and you have Ida Rubinstein. She was one of those people who was at the nexus of the arts in Paris in the first half of the 20th century. And there's just a tremendous amount of repertoire written around her unique personality. So anyway, here it is, my first genuine rarity. Seiji Ozawa does Arthur Honegger's Joan of Arc at the Stake, Jeanne d'Arc au Boucher. Do get a chance to listen to it if you can. I think you'll be absolutely dazzled by it. I mean, you won't want to listen to it every day. It's not that kind of piece, right? There's some pieces that you play once in a while, but you admire and you enjoy them. And this is definitely one of those. So keep on listening, friends. Get ready for the next rarities. There will be more. Take care.